I am Jim Collison, and this is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on January 12th, 2022. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you're listening live, love to have you join us in our chat room. There's a link right above me there on our live page. Jump in there. We will be taking your engagement during this time. If you have questions after the fact, maybe you're listening to the podcast or the YouTube recording, you can always send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to subscribe to Call to Coach on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. You can do the same right there on YouTube, right down there in the corner. Saurav Atri is our host today. Saurav is the regional leadership coach and workplace consultant for Gallup out of our Singapore office. And Saurav, congratulations on being the first for 2022 for Call to Coach. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim, and Happy New Year to you, as well as to all the people listening in live and to all those who will be watching the recorded version of this as well.
We're excited, and we've got a great program for you today. Saurav, for folks who don't know you, continue to take 1 minute and just give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. So thank you, Jim, for hosting me. And I'm really excited to be here having this conversation with all of you. Well, I work with Gallup for the past 10 years based in the Singapore office. And I primarily work with leadership teams all across Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Europe, really helping them create engaged workplaces. I'm also an executive coach on strengths, and I've been teaching our Gallup Global Strengths Coaching course for the past, 8 years now, and worked with close to 3,000 coaches. Some of them are logged in live as well. So I'm really excited to see them as well logging in, and some really amazing friendships and relationships I've built during this time, and a huge advocate of strengths and very passionate about human behavior. And that's what I'm building my expertise on.
Saurav, when we started doing Call to Coach, you might have been my very first international interview. I think we got it set up for we got to get out of the United States, and I think you hosted that one. So thanks for doing that. Tonight, whatever time zone you're in, we're talking about the Great Resignation. Is really the Great Discontent. We have an article. I'll post that link here in the chat room in a second. But Saurav, you got a presentation put together. Let me bring that up and let's get talking about that a little bit. We're all saying this Great Resignation, but why maybe it be the Great Discontent?
Yes, Jim. Thank you for bringing this up. And as you guys know, this is a hot topic that's going on around the world right now, the Great Resignation. And today we will talk about that what is the Great Resignation, and how do we reframe that, and how do we truly understand that deeply? And we are reframing that as the Great Discontent at Gallup. One of my colleagues, Vipula, who is leading our businesses in the US as well, as wrote a fantastic article with Jennifer Robinson that the Great Resignation is really the Great Discontent. This is a deeper dive into looking at that framing of how to manage this global pandemic that's going on there at workplaces. I call this a pandemic as well. The Great Resignation in itself is a pandemic because it started in the US with people leaving their jobs, and now it is a global phenomenon. So we need to find a way to manage it because it does have consequences as well there. So let's explore that today and see the same concept of the Great Resignation slightly differently, looking beneath the surface with a new perspective. I say to see deep, we don't need to have new eyes. We need a new perspective. And that's what we want to explore today, is a new perspective of looking at this Great Resignation. What people are calling sometimes the resignation tsunami or the big quits. So what I'll cover today over the next 50 minutes or so, Jim, is what is really the Great Resignation, the implications of the Great Resignation on our workplaces, on our people, on humanity. Also, why is this happening, where people are going and calling it I quit, but really going deeper than that? Why is this really happening is what I want to cover. How to retain your employees. Finally, how do we use CliftonStrengths as a language of hope, of compassion, of trust and stability to retain our people and build a positive work culture that people want to come to work. People want to engage with each other. For a leader, how do you inspire performances for people? That's what I want to uncover, so that we can stop this discontentment, this unfulfillment that people are having in the workplaces, which is making them leave their jobs. So that's what we'll be covering today. And let's start with digging into deeper. What is the Great Resignation? Some of you might say, well, you've been reading a lot about that. You've been hearing a lot about that, the Great Resignation. It's typically an ongoing trend of employees who are leaving their jobs. But let's be honest, people changed their jobs in the past also, isn't it? So they left, they hired someone else. Some people are calling this is the Great Reshuffle, where more people are leaving and they're rejoining the workforce. Actually, that's what makes this entire journey of people leaving their jobs very different from what had happened in the past. What is going on is earlier people left their jobs and they rejoined the workforce in a better opportunity, a new opportunity. What's now going on is more people are leaving the workplace but not rejoining the corporate workforce. And that's a challenge. And this all started in the month of February of 2020, right after, or I would say right before the pandemic started hitting all the countries outside of China. The first thing that happened, and this is particularly US data, so picking up from US Bureau of Labor Statistics, what we saw was the participation rate of people in their workforce dropped from 63.4% in February 2020 and plummeted to 62.7% in March, and then all the way to 60.2% in April. That's almost 3.2% of the workforce choosing to leave and not rejoin the corporate workforce. And that's what we call as a participation rate, is essentially number of people who can be employed or are actively seeking work versus choosing not to. So 60.2% of the workforce or the population of the US who can work were working. The rest weren't. And not only that, here's what the latest data is. That's when it started. But today, in the US particularly, what we're seeing is that there are jobs, and there are lots of jobs, 10.6 million. And what we've been noticing is over the last 2 years, since April 2020 till now, we've seen a steady growth in the number of job openings that are in the market. Now, there are people who've been hired as well. It's not that nobody's getting hired. So 6.7 million people, this is just the month of November of 2021. 6.7 million people in that month got hired. Now, that's a good thing, right? Well, there are jobs and people getting hired. So why are we calling this the Great Resignation? Well, here's the challenge. 6.3 million people also left the jobs. Well, we call them separations. What's a separation? Either they call them quit voluntarily, that they left it themselves, they were layoffs, or they were discharges. So that's what we call our separation. So 6.3 million separations, whereas 6.7 million hires. But even the gap between them, roughly around 0.3 or 400,000 people, will still not cover the gap between the 10.6 million jobs that are available and only 6.7 million people that are getting rehired in that. So that gap is not covering the bigger need of the workforce. But here's the big thing. 4.5 million people voluntarily left. That is what's being called the quit generation. That's what's going on right now. People are saying quit. The cancel culture is coming into the workplace right now. The cancel culture is coming in the workplace right now. People are saying, I don't want this. And they're moving out. And this is, by the way, growing over the last year. So it's not that we are sort of tapering off. It's been one of the highest in the last few months as well. 4.5 million people have quit their jobs. The quit rate is 3%, which means 3% of the total workforce just quit in the month of November. That's a sizable chunk. When we talk about, hundreds of millions of people, and 3% of that is a lot of people leaving their jobs. Now imagine the impact of that. You go to a Pizza Hut, instead of 5 people there making the meals, you only have 2. Imagine the pressure it puts everyone else under. You go to a hospital and there are fewer nurses to take care of people. Imagine the pressure they'll go through as well. And not only the impact it has on them, but it also has on their families, their friends, the entire society around them, because it creates a whole shift in their life when that pressure keeps building up. And here's what's going on. Through Gallup's research in the summer of 2021, we found out that 48% of people are actively looking out for jobs right now. 48% of your employees, your team members, are actively looking out for a job right now. That is worrisome. Imagine if all your top performers leave. How would that impact your organization and the success that comes with it? Your partnerships, your own emotions at work. And this is not just a US phenomena. This is also happening across the world, especially in Southeast Asia, where I reside, and a lot of my friends who've joined in as well here are coming from. There is a big quit movement that is happening here as well. Looking at data from Ministry of Manpower in Singapore, or the Philippine Statistics Authority in the Philippines, or Statistics Indonesia, or Department of Statistics in Malaysia, here's what we found out. When we look at the unemployment rate in these countries, Singapore is around 3.5%. Seems low overall, but actually it's one of the highest in the last few years. And that's worrisome. Now, it's fine if people are, not having jobs, but if they have opportunities, the challenge is this. Opportunities are there. So the ratio of the number of jobs to the number of unemployed people is 1.56, which means for every unemployed person right now in Singapore, there is 1.5 jobs available in the market. And that number is increasing. This is an average of the last 3 quarters of 2021. What that says is people are not rejoining the workforce. Because if the jobs are increasing and unemployment is increasing, what that means is people are not rejoining the workforce. There's more opportunities than people. And that creates pressure on everyone else who is already inside the workforce. And that's what we need to mitigate and manage as a community. Because this is not just about, okay, this person's left a job. This is about leaders inspiring people to contribute. What people have raised their hands is, I don't want to contribute anymore. I want to do something else. I'm fed up of this. And that's where they're leaving that pressure that's built up on them. Philippines, out of 1,000 employees, 120 people left their jobs. This is the data from 2020. That's the latest data available on the Philippine Statistics Authority. Out of 1,000 employees, 120 left their jobs and only 44 rejoined the workforce. That's a gap of, contribution that is being created in organizations right now. And same is going for Indonesia, Malaysia as well. There is constant increase in jobs and less people joining the workforce. And this is my personal experiences working with leadership across Asia Pacific. I asked one question to all the CHROs I spend time with: what keeps you awake at night? And you know, Jim, what they say? Attrition. Stop this great resignation that's taking away our talent right now. 21 to 25% attrition numbers. That's what is keeping them awake at night, and how to retain them. And that's why I decided to bring this topic up, because it's the need of the hour. It is one of the most, or the biggest pain points that organizations are facing right now. And not only within countries, within an organization also. It's not just the entry line workers who are leaving or the CEOs who are working. We saw that the great resignation is happening across all job categories. And people are looking for jobs across all levels in the organization out there. Now, how does it impact businesses like yours? Well, the cost of replacing a worker is equivalent to 1/2 or up to 2 times the employee's annual salary. And that can cost anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 to replace people. And if it's your best performer, the opportunity cost for them not performing for the next 6 months, 12 months is detrimental, especially to SMEs, to middle layers who don't have the deep pockets to sustain their businesses in the near future. So that's a challenge with me to be aware of. Now, the question I have for all of you, let's say you have a conversation and engagement as well here. So here's what I would like you to do. I'd like you to take out your phones and let's make this interactive so we all can learn from each other as well there. Let's go and scan this QR code and enter your names. We'll make this fun. We'll make this interactive. We'll make this engaging conversation as well, so you can experience the journey for yourself. So go and scan up and go into the chat and write on a yes if you're in it. And I'll start moving into the conversation around some important topics. And the first question I would have for you is, why do you think people are leaving their jobs right now? What are you hearing from your friends, from your colleagues, from your children? What made them switch their job? So, Jim, what about you? I know some of your family members have changed as well, jobs as well. What are you hearing while people are scanning this as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. Even my own kids or children are in the same spot. Kind of what there was, at least, and I can only speak for the United States, kind of in this, because that's been my experience. There was already tremendous job pressure and wage pressure going into this pandemic. The pandemic opened up a gap, right? As we initially there was a loss of jobs, and then as the economy started coming back, everybody needed jobs again. And what that did is kind of create this huge vacuum of opportunity for folks. And I think if they had any discontentment in their role at all, or in this race for just bodies, it created wage pressure. We just saw some stats come out here in the US today about it's really beginning to push wages up here in the United States as far as folks moving around. In a current role, and this is where I think a lot of folks stand, in a current role, it's harder to get that bigger jump raise than it is moving. It's always been that way in the United States. And so I think folks are seeing this opportunity, even with a little disengagement, or maybe in some cases, none but opportunities to make that jump. And so we're just seeing, Saurav, if I could have you move your phone really quick, I'm hearing your notifications come in on that, just in the background. So if you've got that, but I hear the vibration notifications on that. Okay. I think that's you. So, yeah, Saurav. So that's what I'm seeing in this, is this tremendous opportunity for new roles to open up. And so folks are taking those as they come. They're just paying attention to what's going on. I do recruiting for Gallup as well, and we are hot and heavy on recruiting folks. So it created this vacuum, and everybody is just moving around, trying to saying, well, this is the opportunity I have to do something different.
Beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, Jim. And for all the folks, in case you're not able to log into the QR code, that's okay. You can use the chat to write down your answers as well on it. So use the chat function to write the answers. So question for all of you is this right now. What do you think is the reason why people are leaving their jobs right now? Go to the chat here and go and write down your answers. Why are people leaving their jobs?
And
what are you hearing?
If you got the error on the chat, sometimes we overwhelm that feature. Just put them in the chat room here on YouTube, and I'll bring them in as well.
Yeah.
Can I bring a few in from the chat?
Yes, please.
Sorry,
yes,
are you ready to do that?
Yeah.
I think Andrea says employees are not being invested in and don't feel valued. I think there were some opportunities during the pandemic when everyone was scrambling. And so that's a possibility. Lisa says, I think people quit because they're not being fulfilled in their current jobs, right? Engagement may be reduced because of the shift in work experience.
Absolutely.
Do we have any coming in on the app there yet, or no?
Not yet. So let me actually open it up again. They should be able to give another 20 seconds to put the answers.
Kristen said, pandemic caused some to reevaluate, and I agree with this. The pandemic caused some to reevaluate priorities, realize time is short, do what you love. I think it was the perfect storm in some ways for people to get this priority check. Like, what am I doing? Could I have the opportunity to do something different? What's coming in on your slides?
And it's like retirement, fed up, lack of inspiration for future, jerk bosses, lack of safety and engagement, lack of manager support. And that's right. People are feeling these emotions at the workplace. And that's what I want us to think about, is as we're thinking about what's really going on in the organization, you might say, people want to learn and grow. They want a break. There's a burnout happening there. People, want to work from home, and it's hard managing both work and home right now. This work is not fulfilling. They offer better work from home perks, going to better companies out there. I want to do something else. Mental well-being is suffering. Quitting their managers. Let's shift to a growth sector. I'm working in the hospitality sector. There's no opportunities right now. Let's find a tech job and move in that and learn some new skills in that area. I'm worried about my health. They're offering a promotion. My industry is in the future. So you start seeing that These are just going on and on and on and on in organizations right now. There is a number of factors that people are experiencing, which is making them shift to a new job or not rejoining the workforce. That's what we're tackling right now. But are we only seeing surface level problems? What are the real issues underneath the surface is what we want to unpack today, Jim. And if you think about why people are leaving their jobs, we know 48% of people are actively job hunting right now. They call it the world's largest experiment, remote working. Well, it's not an experiment anymore, it's a reality. And I say this is no longer working from home anymore. This is living at work. When I get out from my one room to move to this room, I'm working. And we are switched on 24 hours because there's no divide between work and home anymore. So we all are practically living in work, and life has become a part of that as well there. Organizations said, let's hire for experiences. I don't have patience to hire fresh grads. I feel sad. I feel, hurt for all the youngsters who are studying in universities, who are coming in there and there's nobody willing to give them a chance, giving them an opportunity. Why? Because they want to just hire for experience and have somebody like plug and play who can deliver, easier skilling them. Is this a delayed transition? Last year, people were staying put because of the uncertainties, and 2020 was a year like that as well. And people said, okay, now it's time. Let me move on. So is this, that uncertainty has now become the new status quo? So is that all that hiring freeze that happened has moved into now job opportunities, which is now leading to people applying for those jobs? Finally, workloads. 5 people quit that team. Now the entire workload is on 3 people, and now they're feeling the pressure. The pressure is building up, and that's making them buckle under that pressure also. Mental well-being is being broken down. These are the symptoms that you're noticing that's going on there. What's happening below this? If you really dig deeper, what you'll notice is people are saying, I am not fulfilled. I am unfulfilled right now. I'm not feeling it. I don't know what to do. What they want is change. They want to do something meaningful. Priorities have changed. Earlier, we were all arranging our life around work. Oh, Christmas break, I'll go for holidays then. Oh, weekend is coming, let me plan around that. Now people are reprioritizing life. They are prioritizing their work around their life. Oh, 9 a.m. I've got kids, school. I can't join this meeting at 9 o'clock. I have to join 9:10. Let me get them settled up on a Zoom call with their classes first. So priorities have shifted as people are spending time with their families, and they have other important things on their mind right now to take care of. Their family member is sick. Should I go to work or should I take care of them first? Very different expectations to have in life. So people expect and want flexibility. Their needs are not being fulfilled. Fulfillment. Work is not fulfilling my needs. Delayed transition. People don't make quick decisions overnight. It was a disconnect that started a while ago. So we have to pay attention are we really paying attention to that disconnect that's happening in that generation of people who are now quitting? Burnout, discontentment is emotional in nature.
Sorry,
Great Resignation.
Before you move on to this, there was a question about easier skilling that you had. What do you mean by that? Hire for experience, easier skilling. What does you mean?
Organizations, Jim, earlier used to organize these onboarding programs and manager development programs, and they said, oh, but now we don't have that opportunity to do that in person. Can we still make it effective virtually? Let's just hire for experience. So it's lesser time we would need to spend to onboard that person, shadow me, work in a team environment. So they're making that shift. And that's not the right way to go forward, because we are taking away opportunities from a whole generation of people to help them succeed as well. We have to give them a chance to grow and succeed as well right now. That's the easiest skilling piece that is lacking in. And yes, virtual training can be equally effective, because if you focus on getting the right experience for people in the room, you can still create meaningful impact in that conversation also. Help them grow to that 10, 20, 70 model, around 10 classroom training, 20% coaching, development, and 70% on-the-job training as well there. And that's what I say. Great resignation is not an industry issue, Jim. It's a workplace issue. 74% of actively disengaged employees are looking for a job right now. 55% of engaged workers are actively looking for a different job, and 30% of, well, engaged workers are actively looking for a different job right now. So you see, engagement is the best medicine you have of retaining people, because if people are feeling fulfilled in the workplace, why would they want to leave? So it is the real issue that's going on underneath the surface is there is a massive discontentment that's happening in the organization right now, Jim. And what we've seen is the loss of productivity of not engaged and actively disengaged employees is equal to 18% of their annual salaries. That's costing companies with 10,000 employees, with an average salary of $50,000, roughly $60.3 million a year being lost in disengagement.
And I would think for smaller organizations that impact is even larger. May not be a larger dollar amount. I mean, this is a pretty spectacular number. A lot of companies aren't 10,000. So many of them are 100 or two. But that one employee has the keys to the kingdom, right? They've got they because they've been in a small company, they know they've got all this knowledge, all this experience. So I would even contend, we don't have a number for this, but I would contend even in smaller organizations, that loss is even more painful.
Absolutely, Jim. And think about this, that if you have 3 of your top performers leave with an average salary of $50,000, $150,000 salary dollar amount for a SME is equivalent to $60.3 million for a large organization out there. So absolutely, it is creating a big impact. 18% annual losses.
And that's US data, correct?
US data, yes.
That is US data.
So really, if you notice deeper, is the great resignation is really the great discontentment. That's what's really going on there. And understanding the needs of your employees is the key to your effectiveness as a leader or as a manager right now. And that's why I want us to think differently about whichever role you're in, whether you're in a role of an individual contributor, role of a people manager, leader, or a coach or a consultant. I would like you to go to the chat and write down, what do you think is a job or a role of an individual contributor? What do you think they're supposed to do? What is an individual contributor supposed to do in a company? And for those who are on that link as well there, you can actually go ahead and try out playing a funny game as well to create that for yourself. Here you go.
So the question is, Saurav, what is an individual contributor
expected to do in a company?
So what's the expectation of an individual contributor in an organization? While that's coming in, we continue to go back to salary price pressure, right? I mean, that is driving. We're seeing not only in inflation from a product standpoint, we're beginning to see this wage pressure starting to happen too. And it's hard when that money starts. We saw this already happening among college grads in the tech sector before COVID was even a thing, that there were a handful of companies here in the United States providing all the high paying jobs. And it was just, everybody would flow to that and leave everybody else kind of high and dry. And so that's happening on a bigger scale right now.
Absolutely. And if you think about individual contributors, what are they supposed to do in a company? Are they supposed to, manage people, deliver on the KPIs? And what we typically hear is individual contributors, well, they deliver, isn't it? They deliver on expectations, on KPIs. So they are expected to do a specific task based on their skill set. Then what do you think is a leader expected to do in a company? What do you guys think? Go to the chat and write down your answers. What is a leader expected to do in a company? Page says individual contributors equal to worker B. What about leaders? What are they supposed to do? If individual contributors deliver, what do leaders do? What are they expected to do in a company? Dawn says individual contributors deliver on objectives, hit targets, achieve goals. Yeah, absolutely, deliver. Leaders direct. Absolutely right. Leaders direct the organization. They're like a captain of a ship, right? They set the GPS. Here's where we're going ahead, and they inspire people to go to that direction. Remove the external barriers that comes along. And I'm oversimplifying this right now, but yes, I'm just giving an overarching sort of a direction around these 4 different roles in an organization. Then what is the job of a people manager, folks? Adrian, you're right. They set the vision. Absolutely. Golden Madum says lead, guide, and direct. You're spot on there. What is a people manager then expected to do in a company, folks? What is their job? What are they supposed to do? People managers. Develop others. Absolutely right. Most management definitions tell you a people manager's job is to get the job done from people. The leaders direct, the individual contributors deliver. So your job is to make sure they're doing the job. But if you're not developing those people, and Gallup evolves this definition a lot more, we say a people manager's job is not just to get the job done from people, but also get the people done from the jobs. What does that mean? To help people grow and thrive in the work they're doing. We are on this planet Earth living a life. We want to make sure we have great lives too, thriving lives. And that's where a people manager can create an environment that could engage people, as Golden says, manage their development and growth. I say, sustainable leadership is both revenue impact and human impact. One does not go well without the other. If you're just focusing on people growth without focusing on numbers, then it's limiting. You can't create more growth opportunities for the people because of lack of revenues and resources that you need there. If you just focus on business growth without people growth, then your people would leave as well. Both need to go hand in hand. The best leaders have business in their minds and people's growth in their hearts. That's called sustainable leadership. And that's why I say people managers develop people. Then what's the job of a coach or a consultant or HR business partner that some of you here are already? What are they supposed to do in an organization or for an organization? Jasmine says, I'm a coach and my job is to support, facilitate my clients' goals. Absolutely. Our job as coaches is to add value to our stakeholders. And this is the most important time in the world where we would ask all of you to do just that, because you all have been called to coach in this environment. It's the most important environment for our profession to thrive, because we can support each others in this difficult times, help them think through decisions. And I'll talk more about that, why that is important. Think about the best leader, the best manager you have ever had in your life. What made that manager or leader the best for you? Let's go to the chat and write down, guys. What is it that you think that manager did for you that made that person the best manager for each one of you? And Jim, tell me about your best manager. Who was your best manager and what made that person the best manager for you?
It's a pretty easy one. In the one I have right now, so my boss, my manager, my coach, it really lets me kind of empowers me to do what I need to do. Encourages and develops me in the way that I need to be developed. It all done individually. So it's not like a system. It's not like he's doing the same thing for everybody. He's customizing that for me. And then coaches me when I need to be coached. And that may not always be the positive way of been coaching. There's times, Saurav, I need to be reined back in. And he's like, well, okay, bring it back in, in a way that is good. I guess that's development for a lot of people. That makes some people uncomfortable. No, actually, I appreciate that. I need those. I'm given enough freedom sometimes that I still need that guidance to be brought back in. So that's what I have. We've got some coming out of the chat room here.
Well, sounds like a fantastic manager you have there, Jim. I see other good managers being called out here as well. Was very supportive, trusted me. I felt valued. Best manager I had was very, provided feedback. They listened, acknowledged me in my work. What's interesting about all these comments, Jim, that we're hearing from these wonderful folks? Is that nothing is talking about, oh, he was the most smartest person in the room, or he was from Harvard Business School, Yale, or London Business School, or he was a top performer, or he was 20 years a people manager. All I'm hearing is how that person made you feel, isn't it? How that person fed your needs made that person the best manager or the best leader. So if best leader or best manager, as Lisa says, somebody who ideates with me, who partners with me, who basically feeds your needs, is that, shouldn't we go just do that to be a great manager to people, to understand people's needs and fulfill those needs? So the key to retention and navigating this great resignation globally right now is to understand the needs of your employees, of your team members, and fulfilling them. And if you don't measure it, how do you manage it? So I say, think about 3 types of needs people have. First is intrinsic needs of their own personality, self, internal, intrinsic. The second layer of needs is workplace, what needs they have from the environment that they walk into, the workplace needs. And third is life needs that they have from life. My financial well-being, my social well-being is an important driver. Community well-being, career well-being, those are all important needs for people that needs to be fulfilled. If leaders focus, managers and individuals focus on just fulfilling these 3 categories of needs, you will be able to plug, and not just only plug the great resignation, you will be able to thrive in this great resignation. Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people moving around. Are you a magnet for talent right now? As Jim, you said, right, your son moved because he got a better opportunity and he was looking for a great organization to work for, and he got that. So this is, some people see this as a challenge. I see this as an opportunity that all of you great leaders have. You can showcase your leadership and attract the best talent to come and work for you. That's why I say, starting with intrinsic needs, what lies behind us and what lies before us are just tiny matters compared to what lies within us, Ralph Waldo Emerson said. So CliftonStrengths is an insight into needs of people. And we'll see how do we lean and leverage this language of humanity to really inspire people to perform and to retain and to help them stay back. So here's a question for you. Again, if you've not used a QR code, it's okay. You can use the chat. Question for all of you. How do you engage a team member who has analytical as their signature strength? Go to the chat and write down. If, say, one of the strengths is analytical, what does analytical mean? Somebody who's motivated by looking at, data, facts, and logic. Somebody who's, very, skeptical by nature as well, because they want to prove it. They want to believe in the logic around things. How do you engage a person, your team member, who's got this as their strength? How do you engage a person? Go to the chat and write down your answers. How do you engage somebody who has analytical as their CliftonStrengths theme, as their strength? To help you out also, what I'll do for you is I'll put up a couple of documents on the screen, a quick reference card in case you're not familiar with CliftonStrengths. I hope all of you are. In case you're not, what would that mean as well there? Provide data during decision making. Fantastic, absolutely right. Let's look at a few more comments here. Ask to provide data during decision making. Yes. What else? Give them time to analyze and process. Absolutely. These are absolutely the need of someone with analytical. You feed that need, what happens in their brain, it releases a chemical called dopamine. They feel good because their need is being fulfilled. What happens? They show up at work with their heart because their need is being fulfilled. Similarly, you have somebody else with, say, context as a top strength. What would you give someone with high context to make them feel fulfilled? Absolutely, Marina. For analytical, you give them facts and logic and data, time to process it. They would love it. What about context? What do you give somebody with high context for them to feel fulfilled in a working environment? Let them ask questions, encourage it. Yep, absolutely. What kind of questions, Jerry, would someone with context ask? The backstory is, Jerry, absolutely. Context loves past information. They make sense of the present by thinking about the past. And if they don't have that information, then they'll feel very frustrated, isn't it? Let's look at, say, futuristic. What do you think futuristic would need for them to feel fulfilled in a working environment? What is the need of high futuristic? What is the need of high futuristic, guys? Here it is. What's the need of high futuristic? Futuristic here. Opportunities to talk about the foreseen future. There's somebody who inspired the future. They want to know what's coming ahead 2 years from, 5 years from now. And right now, the futuristic are suffering in the world because they can't see clearly what's coming ahead. And that's why it creates a sense of emotion, instability in their minds as well. So be proactive. Understand the intrinsic needs of each of these CliftonStrengths themes as you're managing people. Because if people management is about understanding people's needs, aligning their needs to the organizational needs, you have a magic story going on right there, because you can inspire performance from people. Engagement is not a warm and fuzzy factor. It has real business ramifications. But what is even engagement? Engagement is discretionary effort. You can't force it out of people. You can only inspire it out of people. CliftonStrengths is the best and the fastest way of inspiring performance. What about adaptability? What do you think adaptability needs for them to feel fulfilled in a working environment? Adaptability. What would you guys say here? You start telling about the past information to adaptability, they will feel frustrated because they don't care about the past. You start telling them, here's what's going to happen 2 years from now, 5 years from now.
It depends what else they have in their top 5. But yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I say, right? Adaptability wants to be here and now. They want to look at what's the present moment options that we have going on. You feed that need, create a changing environment for them, they thrive. You create a fixed, structured environment for them, they struggle because they want flexibility, they want change. That's what drives them. So it's so important to think of these themes as needs relators. They want authentic human connection, one-to-one conversation. You walk into the office and you start giving them work, very transactional, like you don't even care about me as a person. Relator is the top 5 CliftonStrengths most common theme in the world. People want a community. People want a collaborative environment. They want to work in an informal family environment as well when they have high relators. If you don't understand and know them, how do you create that? Thank you, Lisa, for sharing it. In a changing situation, it actually wants to be seen as a thriving person. Absolutely. Empathy. They want to be understood. The need is emotional. They want you to see them, not by what they're saying, but what they're not saying. Are you paying attention to them? Empathy, responsibility, want ownership. When in this environment, Jim, I've been seeing enough leaders, I've been coaching enough leaders, and when I see crisis, leaders roll up the sleeves, jump in, and they take charge and they start micromanaging things without trusting in their people. Of course, when you have responsibility as the number 2nd strength in the world, people want ownership, they want to be trusted, and you take the reins away from them because you don't trust them to handle the crisis. You create frustrations for them, isn't it?
From a positive perspective, positivity 6, I have actually seen some great examples of how this crisis has actually brought out the best in people given opportunities to be able to do these things that maybe they didn't get to do before. In the opportunities, I think, going back to leaders giving them opportunities. Hey, there's now gaps. How can we use you to start filling those gaps, right? How can we start giving you opportunities that may have not been there before? You don't need to go anywhere else. And so
Absolutely.
I've seen some people really step up during this time.
And that's what it is, right? When people play to the strengths, they perform, they succeed, they thrive, because you're giving them the opportunity to fulfill their intrinsic needs and desires and purpose in life in some forms or the other, because they also tie to these intrinsic needs as well there. You give somebody the opportunity to manage change with adaptability, they will thrive. It's what they are naturally good at. Absolutely, Holly, there is. And that's why I say, when you think about CliftonStrengths, it is a positive language, but we need to be aware of where we are not aligning our own expectations with their expectations as well there. And this is where self-awareness is the key. Others' awareness is the key to creating a great working environment that people want to stick around with. And you'll see the best organization I've been coaching and working with, Jim, they do exactly that. They play to each person's strengths. They give them the opportunity to play to the talents and thrive and fulfill their expectations of work. They let them perform, bring their engagement and discretionary effort to work. It's about involvement and contribution. You can't, they say, right, you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. If you want to go fast through this crisis and just try to manage it, you take charge and do it, but then you would not have people to take along with you in the near future, right? And that's what's happening there. So that's why I say what frustrates an analytical, not giving them logic of why you made those decisions. Empathy, you're not understanding what they're feeling right now. Responsibility, you're taking away the opportunity for them to prove themselves as well in this opportunity. These are intrinsic needs. And this is what people are also expecting from the leaders now. What are people expecting from the leaders to fulfill these needs? But when Gallup interviewed 10,000 people to look at what makes a good leader, it's followers, isn't it? If you're a leader with no follower, you're just an individual walking your own path. I don't think leadership is a position or a title. Leadership is a trait. You can be in a position title, but nobody follows your what you want them to do. You're not a leader. You're just a
I've known a lot of individual contributors who are great leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say don't have to be in a position of influence. You can actually still create followership by creating trust, compassion, stability, and hope in your followers. And that's why I say when you think about CliftonStrengths, it is a language built on the vision of Don Clifton to look at what is right about people. And right now, Colin Powell, a great gentleman, he said that leadership is about solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They've either lost confidence that you can help or concluded you do not care. Either case, it's a phase of leadership. And I've noticed the more I speak with organizations and look at comments that people are coming, this is also a failure of leadership that's going on right now. Look at the comments people have shared: lack transparency and communication, threatened me that we'll fire you, management got defensive when we asked questions, lacks courage, transparency, inspiration, communication from the top to bottom. And the more I talk to these leaders also, I realize they themselves are scared sometimes. And that's why they have nobody to talk to. They're also human beings. That's why I say coach is right now the most important profession. Coaching is the most important profession in the world because you have the opportunity to hear and be that thinking partner with the leader to help him think about people from a different lens altogether. Reframe that mindset, help them manage their own nerves, their own frustration, their own challenges, because they are also going through this right now. Leadership.
Saurav, I think this is where our coaches and coaching community can have the largest impact on the whole first half of this presentation is in coaching leaders and managers, and leaders in the sense of those who have influence in the organization, not we think of them as traditional managers, and that's important as well. They have the designated job to do that. But there are plenty of leaders in the organization that don't have a manager title or aren't given specific responsibilities that way for people who are definitely influencers. And I think if we're going to make a difference in this, we got to make a difference in their world. Like we've got to begin to coach them around these things and take those naturally great leaders and make them even greater.
If you go out and reach out to one person, become an anchor for them as a coach, you create a difference not only to their lives, but to the lives of other people out there. And that's to say, right now, even leaders are suffering, unfortunately. But here's what I say. If you are suffering as a leader, reach out to a person, to a coach, because your suffering is not just your suffering anymore. As a leader, your suffering translates to all the people that you work with around you. Every emotion you create has an impact. I say Newton's third law of motion says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But for every decision you make, there's an equal and opposite emotion you create in your constituency as well. So we should be making great decisions. And that can only happen when you take it from a calm, stable mind as well. If you're going through stress, talk about it. I say, I'm just going to bring an interesting element here. Think about all the religions in the world also. They also sort of, talk about being good to people, isn't it? But I say, think about all the, think about Jesus Christ for now. Do you want a life like Jesus Christ, who went through poverty, who was crucified? But what we pray for is the quality of that human being, that even when they were suffering, they stood up and protected others. Moses, he took people towards safety, stability, even though he himself was suffering in that environment. This is a time for all of you to stand up, go beyond just your struggles and challenges and help others. And that's what leadership is about, is helping others even beyond your own struggles in life. And that means we need to manage the emotions we all are experiencing. That's why I say use positive language. I say CliftonStrengths is a language of trust. It's a language of compassion. Before you feed back, feel back. Listen to what people are experiencing right now so you can understand their plight, their challenges, and help them from where they are in their life. Take action, respond. When we've seen when organizations answer my supervisor or someone that seems to care about me as a person, higher retention, more engaged customers, more productive, more profitable. So these are real business ramifications. All the elements that you talked about, what makes great managers, none of them talked about the hard data, hard financials. All of you talked about exactly these elements. Care, he developed me, he supported me, he invested in me, he helped me grow. So how can a leader, how can we do it? Start with feeling back first. That must be devastating for you. I understand this is hard. This doesn't seem fair. You feel so alone. How can we make this better? What can I do immediately? Then ask questions and reflect back for them. Show them that you understand, feel. CliftonStrengths is the language of stability. If you've flown in an aircraft, how many of you have flown in a turbulent aircraft? Go to the chat and write down your answers if you've flown in a turbulent aircraft. Who do you look towards if you are in a turbulent aircraft? Person next to you, if they're shaking, you look towards the flight attendant. If the flight attendant is shaking on his seats or feeling scared, how do you feel? Isn't it? And that's why I say, if you think about the captain is on a microphone to you saying, hey guys, it's gonna be okay. He's saying all the right words, but his tone of voice is not communicating the right message. How would you feel? Like, God, what's gonna happen now, right? I say, right now, the world is in a turbulent aircraft. Our organizations is in a turbulent aircraft, and you are the captain of those ships as a leader. And don't think just about a position as leader, as a human leader, because you lead people in your houses, in your communities, in your organization, in your teams. You're a leader too. So if you stay calm and composed, and you can help other people stay calm and composed as well. So manage your own emotions first right now. In the most uncertain times, employees look to their manager to create stability. Employees need a manager they can count on in volatile times. You could be that person for them. I say a friend in need is a friend indeed. There's a lot of people who have a need right now, and you can be that friend who can remember you for the lifetime. When you're 70 years old and you look back to this time, what would you remember? Would you remember the targets you've hit? How would people remember you as? The targets you've hit or the lives you've changed? This is the chance, an opportunity for all of us to be that person for somebody else and change their life. Help them out when you can. Managers account for 70% of variation team. Understand, reach out. CliftonStrengths is the language of hope. Hope is the belief that future will be better than the present, along with the belief that you have the power to make it so. How can you create hope or how can you tell people that their jobs are stable without telling them the jobs are stable? By providing them hope. Here's how you can do it. You can say, oh, your job is safe. That's one way. Or you can tell them, hey, there's an exciting project coming across by the end of the year. I think you'll be a great fit into that. You just told that person their job is safe without even telling them the job is safe, isn't it? Involvement is the key here. When they generate ideas, thoughts, when you focus on what's right about them, you automatically create hope in their minds because you're playing to what they are naturally good at. And that's what Don Clifton, the inventor of CliftonStrengths, said. What would happen if we studied what's right with people versus what's wrong with them? So study what's working for your organization as well and grow that. Whatever you give attention to will grow. So start giving attention to positive goals, progressive goals. Help your team members generate ideas how to solve them, and then create energy that fosters engagement and motivation for people. Because the more what people do best, the more hopeful they become. So let's put things into perspective. Here's some proof, facts. An organization that we've been working very closely with at Gallup, we've been working with them for many years. And over the last 4 years, we've invested heavily in people, in coaching, developing them. And what we found was when people went through coaching, attrition numbers dropped to less than 3% in that organization across 100,000 employees. And not only for that organization, it's across that level, across different levels in that organization, whether they were individual contributors, experienced professionals, people managers, senior management, even C-levels, attrition numbers were less than 5%, 4%, 3%, 2%. That created that stability in organization. So people have been able to retain employees by giving attention to people. They gave them a forum to share their frustrations, vent out, talk about positive science, help them come with great ideas, let them take ownership of the situation and improve. That's why I say coaching is the foundational profession to plug this gap of the great resignation right now. Be a coach to your people, listen more. And that's why I say the real key here is listening, because coaches are expected to be fantastic listeners, isn't it? And that's why I say listening is the key here. That's why I say CliftonStrengths is a deeper understanding of human needs. And you have to ask yourself, are your needs being met? If you think about this, if you ask that great leader, great manager you've had, look at your top 5 themes and ask yourself, which of your top 5 themes did that person fulfill for you? And you'll get your answer why you stuck around. And when you left those managers in the past, ask yourself which of your top 5 or top 10 CliftonStrengths themes and needs were not being met in that relationship. And you'll get your answers as well why you quit that job earlier. And that's why I say CliftonStrengths. Sorry, Jim.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you by breathing heavily in there. I was just going to say we have a lot to say on engagement, but I think our time is drawing nigh here.
Share this very quickly. One comment I'll quickly make here is for all of you, if you go to the chat and write down what do you see on the screen here. Write on the screen what do you see here. Go to the chat and write down what do you see on the screen here. It's cut words, but I want to see if you can.
And there are a few seconds behind us, so it'll take them 15 or 20 seconds to kind of get there. Saurav, we're waiting for them to write that down. For a lot of the stats that we have in here, best place to go and get those?
Yes, so we've got some of them on our articles online. Gallup does a really good work in generating great articles, so we'll share that, and I'm happy to share that. And thank you, Andrea and Catherine have mentioned that they see this word jumping to conclusion right there. How many of you can see it, right? So powerful your brain is that gave you one half of the information and you plugged in the gaps. But this is also what gets into trouble because we could be wrong here. We could be wrong here. Have a look. We could be wrong here, folks. And that's what I say, right? Our minds start building up stories in our heads. So don't assume anything, measure, ask, because this is what gets us in trouble. I know what this person's manipulating. I know what they're thinking. We don't know. It's only the patterns of your brain trying to fit in the gaps there. That's what I say, use engagement tools to really measure and understand what is really going on from a workplace needs perspective in your organization. And also don't underestimate the importance of well-being. That is the next layer of engagement as well. So these 3 drivers, intrinsic needs, workplace needs that you can measure through doing engagement surveys for your organization, employee engagement, to really understand what's under the hood, and also life needs, well-being needs. If you don't measure it, how do you know you're managing it? So as a closing comment I will have here is, what can you do? Coach. Understand the intrinsic needs of employees through coaching using CliftonStrengths and find ways to align their expectation to organization expectation. Measure the workplace needs of your employees. Take charge of your organization's engagement and develop your leaders to lead effectively, managers how to have meaningful conversation and help your people grow. Because if they don't grow, they feel stagnated. And stagnation is another form of suffering that people have. And invest in the well-being of your people. The mind resides in the body. For a healthy mind, you need to have a healthy body as well. So take care of that for your people. On that note, folks, thank you so much. Jim, back to you for any questions and answers you may have.
Thanks, Saurav. I think, can you stay around for a few minutes of post-show? Okay, so if you're listening live, this will be the value to coming out live. If you're listening to the recorded, we're going to cut it off here in a second. If you're live, stay tight and queue up some questions in chat for me. With that, I want to remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available in Gallup Access. Head out to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. Saurav mentioned this. A lot of the stats, a lot of what we talked about is available right at gallup.com. And let me encourage you to self-feed a little bit on that. Go out there, go through some of those articles. We have lots of great stuff for you. And I think sometimes that learning is best done actively when you're out there getting it. So head out, gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. For coaching, master coaching, or become a Gallup certified strengths coach, we do that as well. You can send us an email, coaching at gallup.com. We'll get you set up for that. Join us on any social platform just by searching Clifton Strengths. If you're listening to this as a podcast or on YouTube, subscribe so you never miss an episode. We want to thank you for joining us today. We'll stay around for a little bit of post-show Q&A if you can stay. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.